getting us to this point together with Philip. So thank you for that. Catalina, the National Treasurer, has provided a report, of course, and that's been circulated already in preparation for this morning. But I think Catalina also intends to join us. So were there actual formal apologies of anyone that we need to record?
Joe Lakatos.
Sorry?
You check Joe though?
Yeah, no, we have now. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Joe Lakatos. Yeah. Any others? Right. Well, in that case, let's move on to the minutes of the AGM held on the 25th of August.
Before we do, can I just get the names of those that are online?
Right.
Who's online, Philip?
Jim and myself, Jim Barry and myself. That's all I can see.
Well, they're the important ones.
Yes, that's well stated.
Yeah, that's right, Jim. Of course. Okay, minutes of the AGM held on the 25th of August. Can I have someone, are there any, obviously there are some actions arising from those minutes, but I think it's fair to say that all that will be encompassed within the proceedings of this morning's AGM. So are there any edits or amendments to the minutes of the AGM from last year? People wish to record that made.
Move that we accept the minutes. The meeting on the 25th of August, 24.
So moved, seconded. All those in favour? You.
Sorry, can you tell? I think that was Paul moved it. Who seconded it?
Peter Moore.
Peter Moore seconded. Paul moved.
Thank you.
Thanks. Turn then to the President's report. Unlike last year, I actually have written one. Maybe I didn't write one last year, but it was more in the form of notes. And this will be recorded anyway, so there will be a transcript, obviously. I'm going to really cover it simply in two main portions: governance and administration, and then outreach, advocacy, and influence. So to turn to governance and administration, as a DRA at the national level, and I'm talking here in my capacity as a national president, not in any capacity, of branch reports. And we obviously come to branch reports where they're available later on in the agenda. So in terms of governance and administration, we've maintained our federated structure throughout this last 12 months with the state branch functions. And I know each of the state branches, as I mentioned yesterday, has conducted activity throughout the year. The one I know best, of course, in Victoria, they continue to run a highly successful luncheon for existing members and other invited guests throughout the year. There's a number of other outreach activities that each of the state branches conduct. At the national executive level, there has been a regular sequence throughout the year of monthly national executive meetings. Most of those sitting around this table participate in those on a monthly basis. And that enables us to get the business of the DRA at the national level done and on track. The composition of that national executive is fundamentally unchanged, noting, however, that there is a Vice President Air Force vacancy at the moment, which we are keen to fill and yet to fill. And I had a further discussion yesterday with Air Commodore Greg Frasina, who, as Director General Air Force Reserves, you would expect him to have a reasonable handle on those who are currently in positions of influence in Air Force, who are either still serving in the reserve component of Air Force or who have recently left. And he's got a couple of names which he has assured me he will chase those individuals down, and he's even prepared to give them a couple of reserve service days. I said, from my perspective, we all do this for love. None of us are getting RSDs to be sitting here on a Sunday morning, and I don't think it's necessary. But however, I'll leave that to him. If he wants to, if that's his way of incentivising the space and getting someone to come along and provide that Air Force insight, happy with that. So that's on foot. The other thing I'd mention in terms of our structure and governance is, as I mentioned yesterday, we don't have an active voice for reservists in Tasmania at the moment, which is, I think of all the places where we should have one, it should be there, given that almost the entirety of the ADF presence in Tasmania, unlike every other state and territory, is comprised of reservists. So to that end, I've had some discussions with Greg Malik, who's Tasmanian by birth, of course, and also has had some discussions with a fellow by the name of Carey, who I think was the last active president when we had a DRA branch in Tasmania.
Yeah.
Now he was. I just dwell on this for a little bit. I won't take up too much time. He had a view that it was he basically, there was some money that's held in trust by the remaining signatories. We're not exactly sure how much money there is there.
It's about 10,000.
How much?
10,000.
Yeah, it's quite a lot.
Yeah. So, and he proposed that perhaps there could be some sort of, and in general terms, the Victorian branch of the DRA has been oversighting activities in Tasmania to the extent that you've got a focus, and I think it's appropriate that we have, as a voice in Tasmania that is coming from Tasmania. I think it's difficult for any state branch to also extend that umbrella coverage to, and those that from Victoria might have a different view. And I guess there's a couple of ways we can skin this cat. We could either continue to push and expand the informal arrangement, that's all it is at the moment, with respect to Victoria, or there is another option which I pursued after discussions with Major General Steve Smith, former commander of 2nd Division, also Tasmanian resident. Seems to be a lot of retired Star Red Cross. So why none of them can? And he's put me in touch with a fellow I served with in Afghanistan, who's now retired in Tassie, Mark Cooper, who's the president of the RUSI in Tasmania. I intend to go down to Tasmania later in the year for a specially convened meeting of the RUSI, Tasmanian chapter. And it seems to me to be sensible to simply fall in on an organisation that is already in existence in Tasmania, is well run, has a standing governance arrangement, which is functioning very well as I understand it, and is almost entirely comprised in Tasmania of people who've served in the reserve. So why wouldn't they also be the voice for reservists in Tasmania, and then by also possibly giving the RUSI in Tassie an opportunity to grow their membership a bit by getting some people on board who are interested in being involved in reserve matters specifically, but haven't up until this point, for whatever reason, joined the RUSI. So with your blessing, let's just put the money question aside for the moment. I mean, it'll have to be dealt with at some point. I know that.
I think we can't. I mean, I'd like to know what Peter's view is, but I tried assiduously for years to get Carey to come to the party.
Yeah.
And all I got was obstruction. And I have spoken to some of the previous signatory holders down there. Chris Spiegel was the treasurer. The former president of Tasmanian, president of Tasmanian DRA was a Skyball graduate. I'm just trying to think of his name. He tried. There's been various people to try, but Carey, whatever reason, refuses to assist. And I don't know whether Peter's got any different view about that in his dealings with.
Well, in quick summary, I know Steve Carey fairly well. I wouldn't describe him as a close confidant, but I think the big problem is a personality problem with or involving Carey. And I don't. My feeling after a few attempts was that it was simply a waste of time.
Yeah.
Trying to deal from him.
Look,
I know a number of people from Tassie who all basically just the whole organisation fell apart, and we're not going to get back involved in it.
Carey's not part of the solution,
No.
and I'm just going to bypass him. So to the extent that we need him at some point to recognise the reality of the fact that we've now got an effective voice for the reservists in Tasmania through the DRA, then I'll deal with him, or we will deal with him then in terms of where those funds should be dispersed. If there's a view that they should remain in Tasmania, I can understand that view, but they should only be redirected towards an organisation that is now fulfilling in an affiliated way the purposes of the DRA. And if that's in combination, in conjunction with the RUSI in Hobart, then so be it. But the first thing I want to do is get down there and have a chat to the current, leadership of the DRA, of the RUSI. If I can find Kerry, I'll seek him out and have a discussion with him. But only after I've got a sense of how feasible it is to have the voice of reservists in Tasmania, which is what this is all about at the end of the day, be able to be mobilised through an effective existing functioning organisation. So
one of the reasons they have, they're in the financial situation that they're in, or they've got that money in the bank, is that the Tasmanian branch used to actively fundraise to then fund the Tasman scheme. Now, the Tasman scheme was put in place by the DRA in Tasmania, whereby reservists were selected to do an exchange with the Kiwis, and this was being run out of Tasmania with no authority from the ADF whatsoever. This was stopped quite some years ago when the ADF said, hey, this has got to stop. The only one that can, well, the only organisation that can deploy ADF members overseas is the ADF. And so the Cresty took over responsibility for the administration of the Tasman scheme, and the ADF accepted that the ADF would finance the Tasman scheme, and so it continued. And so they were left with a good deal of money sitting in their bank account, which is still there.
Well, it raises all sorts of responsibilities in relation to the accounting for the money and annual reports, of which I assume none of which has happened. But I think, I talk to Mark Cooper a lot because, for those who don't know, I'm also president of RUSI Australia. So I'm very involved in the Tasmanian branch. And the Tasmanian branch of RUSI has had a bit of a rocky road. They had a real fallout with Defence Infrastructure Group, and they were kicked off Anglesea Barracks, but they're back into Anglesea Barracks now. They had to move their library into Legacy House, but unfortunately that now leaks, so they're looking like moving their library back to Anglesea Barracks, and I've done everything possible to help Lieutenant Colonel Peter Hodge, who's the librarian down there, get their librarian up and running. So I think there's great merit in doing that, but except I would suggest that we have pre-organised a meeting of all the reservists in Tassie in advance of you going down there to have a meeting of the Tasmanian branch of the DRA and elect office holders, etc., etc.
To the chair, are we able to offer a no-cost affiliate relationship, affiliate membership to the RUSI members, to DRA?
I don't see why we couldn't. I mean, our ability to get a meeting together and elect office bearers. I mean, if we haven't managed to do that for 15 years now in Tassie, how are we going to do it between now and the end of the year?
Because if Smith and Malik come on board, and we have, a president-elect, a treasurer-elect, a secretary-elect before you go down there,
yeah,
I think we can get it going. Peter wasn't trying to take over the Tasmanian branch. He was trying to provide a service for the Tasmanians that wanted to become members of the DRA.
Well, but
And indeed, we do have a number of members in
That's
Victoria resident in
But
Tasmania.
we've never attempted to re-establish the DRA.
all right. Well, let's go down that path as a first step, and see how we go.
Yeah.
I think I don't see that the most recent past president in Steve Carey is really got any role to play in this.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we just need to start afresh. and elect office bearers accordingly. And if we can do that, then we've got a pathway forward. If we can't do that, then we've got plan B, which is to talk to the RUSI.
Yeah.
So is everyone comfortable around that?
Well, the only challenge with that is, as far as I'm aware, there is no register of members.
I think that's exactly right, Peter. So we will need, as Paul has suggested, to try and get together a meeting of interested parties who are current reservists or recently ex-serving reservists to raise afresh a committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd start it again and ignore the money issue. We can solve the money issue a different way. And because ultimately that'll go into state revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
What we need, the key is, a president.
Yes.
yes, that's right. Someone's got to step up.
We need
I
one.
don't know whether Steve Smith's prepared to do that.
No. I mean, he seemed to. No, my reading of the tea leaves in the discussion with him was he was more than happy to offer advice.
But not-
Yeah. Anyway. All right. Well, I've got.
Same with Malik.
Yeah, I've got guidance, so thank you. On the subject of monies of a different kind, of course, and I'm just concluding my governance and administration section of the President's report here. We've got two sponsors, as you know, Defence again, generous this year. We reverted to only asking for $10,000 this year because it was a little bit of an impediment just by crossing the threshold of $10,000.01 to get the money in the bank last year. So by virtue of only asking for 10, it was all there before our conference. And likewise, I've had obviously continued the relationship through discussions with their sponsorship and marketing people in Defence Bank. And we have got 5,000 again this year, as you know, and that helps to contribute to the position that the Treasurer will take us through in a little while. But, you know, suffice to say, we're washing our face in terms of the things that we need to do, in particular this conference at the moment. The DRA's 50-year history, as I mentioned yesterday, all the state branches I know have still got quantities of the copies of that, and we are still selling them. The strong relationship that we've got with the RSL and DFWA was on show yesterday, and I think that's a very healthy thing and something that's been of great benefit to us in particular. And that I see that as being something which we really do need to continue to nurture. And we'll see what happens down the track with things like the proposal to establish an ESO peak body. Good luck with that. My personal view is that will wither on the vine because it just won't. They won't get consensus around the table as to who should pay. Whereas something like the Wellbeing Agency has got legs because the Commonwealth has said it will fund it. Yeah, anyway, that's just my view. There's no significant increases envisaged to capitation, unless I'm missing something here. I still would say that in a governance sense, in my view, we still haven't entirely tidied up the nomenclature around life members, honorary members, you know, etc. when we talk about how we do the count of heads that results in capitation being due and payable. And in my view, it's a very simple thing that we should be able to clear up by simply saying that life members, that's essentially an honorary position that someone has had extended to them for services rendered. If you've paid a quantum of money to be a member forevermore, then you're a life subscriber. And everyone else is an annual, year by year, or perhaps in some cases, if you've got a 2 or 3 year triennial arrangement or something like that, then that's fine too. But when it comes to the head count, we're counting people who have paid a fee to be a member. And that's both life subscribers and annual and triennial subscribers. Those that you don't count are people who've not had to pay for a life membership, which is an honorary life member. And as long as we're all using the same terms to mean the same things, then we all know how to do the head count. So,
You should move a motion to clarify that. So it's in the records and so that all the state branches can follow that. Yes.
well, I'm happy to move that motion from the chair right now. If people want it. I mean, it's a bit unusual to do it as part of the President's report, but I think someone happy to second that.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
All those in favour? Okay, we'll make it so. Look, we do have a couple of questions.
Sorry,
around-
who seconded?
Mike Page.
Mike Page. Philip,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Just a point of clarification about that. So the national office, national executive elects life members of the national DRA. But each of the branches have got people who have served extensive
Yeah,
periods of time. They've elected them as
yes,
branch life members.
yes, absolutely.
So where the branch, your motion covers both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're not council.
Except the national executive, all members of the state branch. And so the state branch, so I'm a paid life member.
life subscriber.
Okay,
Nice.
so the state of New South Wales should pay a capitation fee for me.
Yes.
Understand?
Yes.
And the same with Mike. If he's a member of the Victorian.
I am.
So
I think I'm paid up, aren't I, Brian?
You're a paid annual member.
Yes, thank you.
My point was about, we've got 8 members that are given 10 years or more of presidency to DRA over 50 years.
Yeah.
Or they've been, long-term executive members of the DRA Queensland branch. And the branch executive of the day who's elected them as honorary life members.
Yes.
I'm saying we probably don't need to pay for them because they're not active.
No.
So they're life members, not life subscribers.
Well, I think we've introduced the term here. It wasn't when people sort of paid their life membership. We didn't say it was life subscription. And it was life membership for that. So we are imposing on as a federated body terminology from the head office that isn't in the constitution on the branches. So I'll just be aware, not necessarily against, but if we are going, oh, you just do this because we've said so. That wasn't the agreement at the branches at the time of payment.
I mean, I'm fully on board with your comment there, but what is the impact of that? Because, yeah, I mean, if we were nasty, we could make everybody a life member, and no capitation goes to national.
Yeah.
Alternatively, a life subscriber, whatever the branch, the state branch might term them, state branch sets that figure, doesn't it?
That's correct, because we're a federated body. This is the joys of federations. Anyone that's lived through any probable thing, the states are in control. So what I think the motion that we should put to the branches, they accept that term.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm happy with that. And I'm equally happy not to use the term subscriber if that causes anybody any discomfort. I mean, we could call people life members if they've paid a
Membership.
yeah, they've paid a life membership.
So an honorary life member or a life member.
The new term should include an honorary life member as a discrete. That immediately says.
Is that okay, Pete?
That works, and I think that the motion we should put is a forum that should be accepted by all of the states and taken by the state presidents to the branches to pass as a motion. So then guess what? They're bound by it. Then they go, no, we don't have to do this. And that might be good for you to think, very much like the Commonwealth and the states. It's great for the Commonwealth government to think that, but this is the states, it's states.
Yeah. And we could adjust the motion as passed, so an amendment to the motion, to use the terms, and this perhaps is more in accordance with existing usage, that we talk about honorary life members and life members.
Yeah.
And life members are those who've paid a sum of,
To achieve life membership.
yeah,
And honorary life members are
conferred by the branch. Yeah. People comfortable with that?
all comfortable.
The only problem I have with that is that when I was a branch treasurer, the life membership fee that we were charging was set on the basis that they wouldn't be covered with capitation. So, in effect, in Victoria, there's going to be an issue with people who believe they paid up for life, and we've got to run our funds down to pay the capitation fees for people who we can't collect any more money from.
And by the way, the state of Victoria's got 103 life members. So you're talking about $500 plus additional capitation.
Now,
capitation fees. I think it's unfair that because we've got so many life members, we pay a very large capitation fee.
I think we're all in that boat.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, people who buy a burial plot and the government comes 20 years later and says, we're taking it back. But that is an issue because, we charge 5 members $200 for a life membership. And, that's 10 years of membership. So once you pass 10 years, well, they are.
Again, these are all semantics, and a lot of this is driven by what happened decades ago.
Yeah.
I think we just need clarification of how the laws apply, because again, the joys of a federated body that each branch decides to do what it believes is right. And if we're saying as the national executive, we believe that these are the rules that should play by, they need to be clearly articulated and agreed to by the nations. And we've got in South Australia, we pay $300 a month membership, which is 10 years. So that's different. There's a difference there.
Yeah.
I think $5 per capitation fee is not unreasonable to fund the national executive.
Look, in my view, obviously, state branches have had the autonomy over many decades to determine what they want to charge their members for life membership. We live with the consequences of those decisions, and the national body needs to be funded. And no one's ever quibbled about the need for a capitation of flow in an equitable way from the branches to the national body. And I would have thought if there was one message that came out of yesterday was that we do need to get on the front foot and be more active in some areas, and that does take some resources. So I guess all we've done this morning is to standardise the terminology.
I think that will solve a lot of problems in future years.
Yeah.
Because other people, oh no, that's not what we agreed. Well, if it's recorded in the minutes that was agreed, then we can go back to that and we're claiming one set of rules.
Yeah.
Also, in a number of states, and I know that the legal board have kept it down the road, is the Associations and Corporations Act has required a number of changes to associations. I'm not sure that all the state branches, and I'm pretty sure that we don't comply completely with the requirements of that act, and I think that that's it. So this is one of the issues, and I'm not proposing here that we consider the federated model as maybe not a current vehicle in which the current legislation to comply with the current legislation.
Some branches are and some are not. So, yeah. And that brings me very neatly to the question of looking at the national constitution and structure. And as we know, Joe's an apology today, and Joe was looking at this as his particular project. But Joe and I had time to talk about this yesterday. So he's got a number of exemplar organisations that he's drawing on for inspiration. We would recall that we had a discussion last year about whether the best path for the national body was to go down the path of incorporation, and the considered view was that it wasn't. And so he's looking at alternative models that he believes would be effective, and he's undertaken to come back with a proposal for the national executive as a whole to consider before the end of the calendar year.
And I think the problem really comes down to the Royal Collectors that says can have your money.
Yes.
Oh, sounds very much like one of the talks yesterday.
Yes. Yeah, the root of all evil. Yeah, or at least dissension. And of course, this then plays into just a couple of my final points around the fact that we do know that we used to have a hard copy national magazine that went out on an annual basis that wasn't generated during the pandemic period, and we haven't really got back to the reintroduction of that. But then that triggers then a discussion about whether we would want to go back to a hard copy version of something like the Reservist of years gone by. And I think many of us would have the view that something that was online and came out perhaps on a quarterly or 6 monthly basis would be more topical and accessible to people. But how to get after that, and who's going to write the articles, and who's going to generate the formatting and everything else that goes with that, and to get it out there. So I think that's something which we are still yet to address, and that's entirely connected to the look and the functionality of the national website, which everybody agrees I think is subpar. We do need to, that's the first step, I think, in terms of a sequence. You get the website right, and then there's other things you can hang off the website beyond that point. So I think, if people are happy for that to be the priority, and we go from there. Which brings me then to the second part of my report, which is outreach, advocacy and influence. I'm just going to really go the wave tops here because of much of what I'm going to say I said yesterday morning. I think we've had a busy 12 months, and I think we can look back on a relatively productive and effective 12 months in terms of our influence on the Reserve Strategic Review, the consultations that we had, and you would all know that probably for a while there, on every second monthly meeting, we had Doug Laidlaw updating us and giving us perspectives on where the Reserve Review process was at. The general articles that we've had on reserve matters in various publications, our continued ESORT involvement, and also our decision last year to continue to subscribe to and be involved in ADSO. I think it's fair to say that ADSO is, as a body, fairly marginal in terms of its influence. It certainly had zero impact on the federal politicians during the election campaign, unlike to a greater extent, I think the RSL's open letters to people did have some, at least they got responses. And of course, the real litmus test for all of this is whether there is to be an ESO peak body, which obviously would largely negate the strength for a body like ADSO to continue on. But we're not there yet. So I think that's still very much a work in progress. The support for a peak body and the Veteran and Families Wellbeing Agency has been well canvassed yesterday, and as was the recommendation 90 of the Royal 90B, as the Secretary was at pains to point out, of the Royal Commission into Defence of Veterans Suicide. We continue to argue, of course, as we canvassed again yesterday, for the white card and non-liability health care. And this morning, just by way of refreshing, I went to the website, and interestingly, it was updated as recently on the DVA website as the 25th of August this year, the Veteran Covenant, and what it says in there. But it absolutely still says, a defence veteran is someone, all who have served in Australia's armed forces, are defence veterans. And they're of course, that's not a piece of policy. It's not a piece of legislation, which the Secretary was at pains to point out yesterday, but the covenant is what the broader Australian community read and understand to be a veteran. So,
on our website, there is a paper that I wrote several years ago now, which I reviewed a couple of weeks ago to see if it's still current and relevant, and it is. And it presents the argument quite clearly and highlights the issue with DVA. It's of their making. It's on our website, so if you want to reread it, refresh yourself up, but it presents the case, I believe, quite clearly.
We are a good outcome from yesterday. I think I talked about this briefly with a couple of people, was the acknowledgement that the DRA certainly should be consulted in relation to the whatever actuarial work goes on to work out how much it would cost to extend access beyond the current status quo arrangements in terms of non-liability healthcare and the white card. And so I think that's a win, and that's the one that we need to pursue and follow up on. And I'll come to that momentarily. And also the ongoing consultation that we're going to have on the Reserve Service Protection Act review, and what our view is on whether the fitness for purpose, and I think broadly speaking. We recognise that 2001 is a long time ago, but a lot of the things that relate to reserve service haven't changed. But in terms of some of the new forms of service and also the ability of people to work in ways that are, perhaps still rendering their reserve service, but still also satisfying their civil employment commitments. The world doesn't work in the same way that it worked in 2001. So, so there's merit in a review of the Act, and it's good that we're going to be consulted.
What Doug said yesterday was not exactly correct. So the Act was set up in 2001. I instituted the review of the Act when I was Director of Reserve and Employer Support. I believe it was 2019 that the Act was completely reviewed at that time and updated. Greg Gard played an important part in advising on that, but it has been reviewed in more recent times. But I'm not saying that it's not due for another review. It won't. It certainly won't hurt.
So before I move on to my final point, I would just say that it's my intention to draft letters to go to both the Minister for Defence, praising him of the outcomes of yesterday, and by extension, asking him, once we decide on a date, to come along to next year's conference, wherever that may be. And I'm also going to pen a similar but different letter to CDF, again, thanking him for his address, acknowledging that he wanted to be there but couldn't at the last minute, and here's next year's diary entry to make now. The final thing I'd say about that is that obviously pursuing the outcomes from yesterday are also partly enabled by having a patron with profile and influence. And you heard from General Hurley yesterday. I thought it was a good address. I'm gratified it was because I wrote it. So I apologise if there was a bit of an overlap between his comments and mine later ones. That's unavoidable. Freudian slips all the way along there. But I'd just like to table two letters for the annual general meeting. My original letter to General Hurley inviting him to be the patron and his gracious reply. So table those. And that's about it.
I think we should also write to Angus Taylor.
Yes.
I mean, he turned up.
Well, I paid him the courtesy of him speaking first, given that he was physically in the room, which I thought on reflection was probably the right thing to do, I think.
I have I think a slightly different approach to the letters. I think we need to write, I totally agree, we need to write to the Shadow Minister, the Assistant Minister, the CDF and to Hurley about the outcomes of yesterday and what our concerns are going into the future. And I think you put all the nice words around it, thank you for your support, etc., but we've got to hit home about some of those issues that we did at the end of yesterday's session, and that should be the key point in my view going forward.
Yeah.
And the one issue that's probably not in that list, but should be on that list, is the carte blanche use of training days to set up people getting out of the full-time force at senior levels, and I'm talking about 1-star, 2-star level, and they seem to go on in Penang. There's a complete lack of transparency how that process is undertaken. And what that means is, because as you know, the training days is worked on an average salary, that means there's large amounts of money being sucked out of units that would normally go into reserve training days for reserve units. And as I understand, there's already cutbacks in the usage of reserve training days. I'm not talking about the 150 days that we heard about yesterday. I'm talking about normal usage within units.
Yeah. And I think in part, not in all, but in part, what CDF has foreshadowed in this draft directive is a response and recognition of that. That there are far too many senior CERCAT 7 officers who are simply stepping out one day and starting to do the same job or something very close to their same job on RSDs the next day.
Yeah.
And they're all on 200 days.
Yeah.
And that simply is inequitable for the bulk of the reserve who are rendering a capability outside of the Canberra bureaucratic bubble.
A touchy subject, though.
Well, we're here to ginger people up, aren't we? I mean, I would have thought.
It is a touchy subject, but it's potentially corrupt conduct, in my view.
Yeah.
There's no transparency, there's no act, which someone just tapped on the shoulder and continues on.
I think we need to flag our concern for it, but equally our support at the CDS efforts to put a
Yeah.
boundary
So
around this
support that.
expenditure. Yeah, I think that's probably the way to characterise it.
Last figures I saw, the biggest use of Army Reserve training days was Army office.
So, if there are no other questions, I'll conclude my report on that note. That brings us to national issues.
Can I just?
Yeah, sorry.
I would like to move a motion to suspend standing orders, if I could have someone second that for me.
Before we do that, shouldn't we accept the movement?
Oh, sorry, yes, I should move. Yes, I'll move that my report be accepted. Sorry.
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you, Ian. Ian, seconded that.
Right, so now, having sorted that out, can I move a motion to suspend standing orders? Second for that. Paul Irving. So on behalf of the DRA executive and the membership as the Deputy National President, I would like to thank and congratulate all of those involved in organising the 2005 National Conference. I think we 25. Is that 2025?
Well, thank those in 2005. I'm sure we've done it.
2025, the National Conference. In particular,
Well done, Jim. By the way. Yeah.
in particular, our national president, Mike, you put a lot of effort into the organisation of the conference, which we all agreed was an outstanding event, an achievement. You addressed the issue yesterday of the trilogy, and I think we all agree that this was the best of the three that we've run so far in terms of its outcome and delivery. And I would just like to thank you on behalf of all of us. Thank you very much for all the work that you put in to ensure the success of this year's conference. Additionally, I would like to thank John Brennan and the New South Wales branch for the great effort they did in organising and coordinating the conference. It ran exceedingly well, great venue. Wonderful to include the cadets as part of it. So, John, thank you and your team very much also for the great work that you've done.
Yeah, well done.
So well done to everybody who was involved in the coordination and delivery of this year's conference. Thank you. And I now move. Yes.
Just make a point that it would be great if we could provide a national response to thank you letter to the cadets.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be flash, but it would, I mean, I can do one.
Can you draft one up for me to? Yeah.
It's much more imposing coming from you than me.
Yeah, I know about that. But and I think as well, there was a certain message conveyed yesterday by having cadets here in that capacity, being seen to be supporting the conference, and the fact that we were doing it in this room, in the Russell precinct, in R1.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right. So on that note, can I move a motion to reinstate standing orders?
Second.
Yeah.
Mike Page.
Mike Page. Second.
Okay, let's get cracking. Look, I haven't. I'm happy to take any commentary, but I think membership is something we're all conscious of the need to reinvigorate and refresh, and that's a work in progress. A lot of people here in the room yesterday in uniform who are still serving. That's a great outcome from I guess what people saw on the screen yesterday. If for those that were online observers that's not necessarily being translated into membership on the ground in state branches of those that are serving. Look, that's a general comment, and I'm probably being unfair in saying that there are probably places where it's waxing rather than waning. I get that, but it's something we all need to, obviously have a focus on. And I'm not going to dwell on the matter, but I think we've got a job to do still ahead of us. But part of that is being that voice for the reserve and being seen to be out there and out and about in that way. So, and a lot of that can only be done at the centre. A lot of that can only be done by the national body. So I recognise that too. The two things are inextricably linked. Succession plans then is a natural segue from that. And we know that we need, it's good to have a succession plan in place, and good to know that there are people coming through who are prepared to step up into those key leadership roles, particularly in the state branches and obviously at the national level as well. I can only lead by example, I suppose, and make it clear what my intentions are. So I will certainly be here for another conference, unless someone wants to tap me on the shoulder or say they'd like to go. I should just convey though other things that I'm involved in. And none of these things give me any sort of remuneration, I might add. Not that that's, but I'm just making the point that I expect before the end of the year to be elected as a president of Melbourne Legacy and to sit on the national board of Legacy. That is a commitment in and of itself, and I'm very happy to do that because my mother was a widow and built my legacy, and it's something I wasn't able to do when I was in full-time paid employment as the CEO of RSL Victoria. But now that I'm not, I've been involved in Legacy now, for 2 or 3 years. So that comes around at the end of the year, and that's at least a 2-year term. And I'm not sure about on the board of Legacy Australia. That sort of might be a bit more open-ended. Either way, that's that. The other things I do are very low drag, honorary colonel of my old unit, 4th 19th Light Horse, the chair of the Melbourne Cricket Club's military veteran group. We have some, splendid luncheons 2 or 3 times a year, and stuff like that. So, look, I'm certainly committed for another year and may well be fine for another year beyond that. But I feel it's important to be transparent and put it out there. And so I will, for my part, and I'm sure you would be if you can assist as well. There are a number of reserve senior officers with great connections, still well connected, who are now coming to the end of their active CERCAT 5 employment life. And some of those are in Victoria, and I'll certainly be.
Don't feel about that.
No, without naming any names, absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, he's got other fish to fry. He wants to get back into paid employment and be a barrister, and he's already working that space. He's gone to reserve service days now, so that he can spend some time back down in Melbourne, re-establishing himself in the legal fraternity down there. So, yeah. I mean, everybody's busy, and some people actually need to earn a coin, and that inevitably limits their availability. And of course, as you heard yesterday, just in case you missed the observation, when Doug was rattling through the lines of effort, I'm also doing some reserve project work as part of the LOE 5 effort to design an accelerated training pathway. Now, I presume that you're all happy for me to do that while still remaining as the national president of the DRA. Again, transparency. I don't see. Of course, there's everyone knows that I'm doing that. The defence hierarchy know that I'm doing that. I need to submit a conflict of interest form to Natasha Fox. It's not about having a conflict of interest. It's about managing perceptions and all the rest of it. I don't think there's anything inconsistent with wanting to try and design the best accelerated pathway that defence can have if that's what the recommendation says, which it does in the reserve review, and being the national president of the DRA. If someone's on a contrary view, please let me know.
I don't believe there's any conflict of interest in the DRA, any conflict there.
All right, in that case, you go.
But I think it should be noted, because you declared a perceived conflict, and it was agreed by the executive that it was not.
Yeah, but I'll put it out there, but it's, yeah.
So that, you know, if anyone says, no, but I declared that, and it was agreed that it wasn't, it's,
At least it's
it's
recorded.
evidence.
Yeah. Which, look, thank you, Ian, for the vote of thanks about this year's conference. And I just want to use that as a segue to then turn immediately to next year's conference and just have a quick discussion around the table. We don't need to make any hard and fast decisions now, but I do just want to, as is indicated there in the agenda, theme, location, dates, format. As I say, we don't need to settle on any of those things right now. I would just suggest, though, I've looked at the dates for the every 3 years, and we had a clash with this in Brisbane, which was unbeknownst to us at the time. But the same weekend, as it happened in Brisbane, was the ALP, the Labor Party's national conference, which of course sucks up all the people in senior positions in the government. And so we were lucky on the day to get a representation at all, I think, that we did, which was good, of course. So I've checked, and the ALP, and they only do it every 3 years, the ALP National Conference for next year, not because I'm a card-carrying member of the Labor Party, but I managed to find out, that it's in July. So that's not going to clash with anything we do in August, or indeed early September, and that's sort of when we've... So I guess if we go with exactly replicating the dates from this year transposed to next year, it would be Saturday the 22nd of August. If we wanted to go 1 week later, it'll be Saturday the 29th of August. And so let's just put that to one side for a moment. In terms of a location, again, I want to be upfront here. I have had a discussion with, and I want to put it on the table with Peter Moore. It's been a little while since we went to Adelaide. I think Adelaide's a beautiful city. It's easy for people to get to in a relative sense. It'll enable our Western Australian colleagues to get there with a bit more alacrity than they've always normally been able to do. Not that that's,
That's not true.
I know that it was scheduled for Adelaide in 2020, but the pandemic put paid to that. We've got a great asset there still in a naval and military club, which is a fantastic venue, akin to where we had the United Service Club support for the 2023 conference in Brisbane. And also, I think it's timely in a way because Adelaide and the South Australian precinct is a focal point for defence capability over the medium to long term, with Osborne and the invigoration. Yeah, all of that. There's a lot of topical stuff going on in South Australia and Adelaide in particular. So what do people think about that? Peter, firstly, of course.
Yeah, I quite accept that it's probably, it is a suitable location. I'm in the Naval Military Air Force Club. I declare I'm also a board member there. But it can only have about 90 people. So it max out at about 90 in the club. But it is central, it's easy to get to. I'm quite happy to put my hand up and say, yeah, we will.
There's a point I wanted to raise.
I put out some of the point of view. Canberra's the place. Quite frankly, we are a national organisation. We are close to Sydney and Melbourne. And I think this is a fantastic setup. And I think that we perhaps should really consider the possibility of continuing on in Canberra.
Yeah, John, what do you, actually, that's a very good, there's no place of argument.
I'm not have to get more cadets.
Can I put a variation on a theme to that proposal, Peter? I don't disagree with you that from time to time it's very good to have it here. to reinforce certain things. But there's nothing to prevent us from having a model where we, on a routine basis, return to Canberra, but still spread it around the state branches.
Just alternating.
Yeah.
Obvious solution.
Yeah.
And to be honest, as long as what we did here, is not organisationally heavy once we get the model. I mean, the only thing I found annoying yesterday was access to the door.
Yeah.
And if we were to do it on a routine basis, I'd get just some proper signs made up so people knew what they were doing. And I would continue the model of getting the cadets in to help us. And streamline a few things so that if we could do it on as an SOP. And I think we can do that. So and I think there's good things about both things. I think we are a federated organisation, so we do need to get out to the states. But as a national, a national advocacy body, it does make a lot of sense to come to Canberra, noting that, as we saw, if no more guarantees, the arrival of
Because these bonds, they live in other places. They only come here during the week when Parliament's sitting, and they come here at the last possible moment, all on Sunday night.
And I can assure you,
I think the quote is, this is the first time I've ever been to a meeting in a government building on the South.
I don't necessarily want to do that. And we know Angus may not be defence spokesperson next year, so that could be hasty again in West Australia. So we just need to be aware of that. I mean, if we come here because it is the centre of our national defence endeavour, that's fine. But I can assure you, my office looks out over Canberra Airport, and if 13:35 on a Thursday, those VIP jets are streaming out. So
Canberra really does not guarantee any better roll up from politicians.
And even senior deputies. So that was quite disappointing.
But I mean, if we went with a sort of a iterative model where it's in one of the state capitals on any 1 year, and then the following year, or maybe on a 3-year cycle, we could have let's not have a discussion about that right now. But on alternate years, it was in Canberra, then we would always guarantee that at least once in the life of every sitting government, even if it's only a one-term government, we would have a meeting here.
Correct.
And I think that would be a useful thing.
That's one of the things you need to take into account is the interactive system. And we couldn't use it in Victoria with the last one we had down there because it was in a private hotel.
Well, it's also it wasn't Josh.
No, we couldn't have Josh because it was a.
We're never again going to go to a place that says you must use our system.
So it's going to be really important because whether we like it or not, there will be some speakers coming online.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Just a question, why does it have to be on Saturday?
No, that's actually good.
Sorry, was that statement? So why do we have to have it on Saturday?
When you're here, gentlemen, I'm not sure that you all are going to employ it on a weekly basis.
It's very hard to get the serving reservists to come along unless it's on a Saturday.
No, that is also a good point. That's a good point. And we banged the drum very heavily amongst our contacts with the headquarters, with headquarters 5 Brigade and 2 Div, and they delivered. They delivered us again 2 years in a row. They delivered us senior officers that were serving. I banged the regiment drum, so we've got 3 out of the 4 RSWR commanders. So we are a reserve organisation, so if we want people in the room, I think Saturday needs to be. If it is more a case of we're not worried about how many people attend, it's more of an advocacy type thing, then a weekday makes more sense.
From a purely getting politicians to come along perspective, of course, having it on the weekend means we never have to worry about deconflicting with parliamentary sitting.
Yeah. So I just throw it out.
No.
Everyone's going on Saturday.
Yeah.
And you go, if our speakers are paid to turn up, and they go, no, that's my weekend. That's inconvenient. They go, oh, I'll just shoot for the league.
Okay. A lot of it's about giving them notice anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a point on Canberra, it's bloody cold.
Yes.
And it's very difficult for people to get to, particularly from Darwin. It's bloody,
Oh, and not just, yeah, absolutely.
and
Jeff.
Western Australia as well,
Yeah.
and quite expensive.
It's always a connecting flight. It's multiple flights, not just one flight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
3 flights to get here and 3 flights to get home.
The other point is that we're a membership organisation and we can engage with members in each state if we circulate it around.
Yeah.
I think we should lose sight of that.
No, that's important. It's important. Yeah, I think that there's a few principles we need to think about. You know, that's probably the most important one. And access to venues and much we want to engage with serving members.
Yeah.
Because as we saw yesterday, and I think last year, serving members will be paid by their headquarters generally. Certainly, Command 5, we don't pay all her members. And so that offsets the cost for them, and so they're more amenable to turning up. I haven't done a breakdown of the figures, but I would say it was 75-25 for in terms of in the crowd. We took away ourselves. So it was a very high proportion of serving members,
Which is fantastic to see.
but you know, that's a cohort, but if we want to achieve that, we need to do so.
Saturday, a weekend.
I just raised it.
I'm glad you did, Peter.
Because
Can't
we
just
have-
assume.
Otherwise, we're just going,
Yeah.
just hitting
Yeah.
reset.
Yeah.
And as I said, with South Australia, we're going to be with probably 90 attendees as the venue size.
Can I raise an issue? I was having a chat with Josh yesterday about the potential of having an Adelaide and at the club.
Yeah.
Josh made the point to me that the venue is limited, as you've highlighted, to about 90 people. And I think also from the point of view of Josh's delivery of the audio, right, that there are perhaps better or other venues that should be considered in Adelaide.
There could be, but there would be a cost to that.
Yeah.
What I can say is I don't think we get more than 90. I mean, the Queensland drum really beat the drum, and I think we've got 100, about 100.
Well, I understand 90.
Yeah, we've got.
Yes, absolutely.
I would think 90 is a good.
And-
At 90, I think we'd be doing pretty well.
Okay, and the other thing is that we've got better at the virtual presentation. And I think yesterday there was a bandwidth issue from here to delays, etc. So I think that we could increase the capability, because the first time it's ever virtually held was from Adelaide, and we had an incredible number, I believe, because we said anyone can do it from all over the world. I think that if we improve the virtual experience, which was really good yesterday because you actually were reading the questions, whereas in previous years we're trying to raise their hand and no one can hear it. If we make an effort to increase the virtual delay of that, we'll have greater outreach regardless of where it is.
Yeah.
And the quality of speakers this year was exceptional. It's the best. So if we can do that, maybe shortening some of the sessions so that they are more receivable on a virtual rather than a physical side of things. But that's it. So now I'm quite happy for the South Australian branch to host it. I can commit the name of the military club as a board member. It won't cost anything for the venue.
That's a point.
For the next, which is 22nd.
Well, let's see. Do we want the 22nd, which is essentially transposed this year to next year? Or do we go 1 week later? We avoid the football finals, but there'll be a few in Adelaide. Yeah, if we go to the 22nd.
Yeah.
Okay. 22nd, that gives me a date also when I pen my correspondence to.
You might want to have a vote, whether it's ACT or South Australia, seeing some members here are saying they prefer to come to Northern to the ACT. So I think you need to have a vote on it. I think we need to walk out today and say, where's the venue and what's the date?
Oh, we just have.
Yeah. No, we've got an alternative position put forward.
No, Peter, I think you see the wisdom in my sage response.
I agree, but I just put it up as a suggestion.
Yeah.
Such a good place.
We're going to South Australia on the 22nd of August.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really wants to say something like this.
The most important thing is that during the venue at morning tea time, I can walk out and buy a cappuccino where I can't do it here.
I knew there'd be someone.
Always priorities.
Important point.
I'm not going to have dining lunch experience when you're going to put that.
Yeah, I'm just going
Well,
to.
can I discuss another aspect?
Well, we're in the business. Yes, Peter, is it part of the,
Conference.
yeah.
Dinner.
Yeah, no, I'm coming to that. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Not like last night, but not a dinner.
Well, let's go with that. Let's go straight to that then, if that's your view, because I have an entirely different view. What do people think about the format that we had last night? It was, you know, from my perspective, well, I mean, everyone was there. I mean, what do you think? I mean, I'm going to open up to the floor.
I thought it was good. My problem I've always had with the formal dinners is having to drag a dinner suit or a formal mess kit from one part of the phone to another.
It's a whole separate piece of organisational work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And it's exacting work. Matching names to tables, numbers of tables, all that goes away with the style of function that we had last night. And double the cost.
Easily.
So can we stick with the drinks and cocktails? Can you accommodate that readily, Peter?
Okay, so I'm just bringing it up as a discussion.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's good. We've discussed
It's great. Possibly to have a venue with a few more seats, so people, you know, the older ones that need to have a bit of a rest. can
Yeah,
sit
that was underdone. We should have had more seats around and we can, yeah. It's refined. It's the first time we've done it that way.
That's quite correct. It's a lot of effort to run a formal dinner. And as we found out in the Sydney one that I organised 2 years ago, last year, we were still chasing up people for payment for things.
Nightmare.
Absolutely. And they were serving senior officers.
We can, the thing is, we can easily do a formal dinner because that's some of the things, or we could do a casual drinks and canapes. That's easy. I found last night a very easy thing to do, as opposed to getting dressed up and having a suit.
And it also enables you to mingle. I mean, I think I made a reasonable fist of getting around and at least saying hello to every single person in the room. And you can't do that. You just can't.
And if people want to have dinner, we can arrange a dining room for them to have dinner in. So if they want to go, well, I'd rather have dinner with half a dozen mates.
Food was excellent. Last night,
And
actually.
that's what we did last night. We went out into the dining room at the Commonwealth Club. Well,
I was happy to provide my club account number, Peter. So you can do that.
I must admit, I wasn't sure either way, but after experiencing last night, I thought last night was exactly what we need going forward. It's a good event, and as Mike said, it allows people to get around, mingle, mix, talk with, which you don't get at a dinner.
The other thing is that you might want to consider having the night off. I mean, I know the night off because it's people fly in, fly out the same day. But
Yeah.
the night before would be a very good place to set the scene before the conference, so that people have actually talked to people beforehand and then do the conference. But, yeah.
Yeah, well, we don't need to go firm on that.
No,
That's
that's
another
absolutely
option. Just get that for next year.
Can I suggest something that it seemed we decided we're going to Adelaide? That it is an effort for a lot of people to get to Adelaide. It's travel involved, time commitment involved. That we look at perhaps on the Friday, organising visits to perhaps Osborne, but importantly to the Elizabeth precinct, Edinburgh precinct. For those that can make it and would be interested in doing it, so that you fly on the Thursday, Friday is a visit to the defence precincts, maybe an informal dinner on the Friday night, leading into the conference.
Yes. What are you going to see on Edinburgh? And what are they going to allow us to see? I mean, it's so difficult to get on a defence base now. What are you actually going to see?
Well, who knows? But I mean, that's Peter and his team have got contacts there in South Australia.
Look, good news.
look, we can certainly visit certain range visits for in Osborne, but as you say, you'd be driving, look, there is a building. There's a building. Yeah, that's pretty soon.
Yeah, we see the variety.
Gentlemen, really, all I wanted to try and resolve today was the venue, or the location, the date. And whether we stick with theme, and we haven't got to the theme yet, so I want to keep moving. And also how people felt about the style of social function that we did this year as opposed to previous years. Peter, do you want to say something?
Only to second what you've just said.
All right. Okay, good. So let's not get bogged down in the tactical detail at this juncture. I think, do you have enough guidance? I mean, we're about to move the theme, Pete, but thank you. Okay, so the theme, as I said yesterday, we've sort of been on a journey of a trilogy, and now we are at a point where we captured things at the end of yesterday in terms of particular areas of focus now, guidance back to us for the DRA to focus on. I'm just wondering whether those matters that were crystallised at the end of yesterday, is it all of those things, or is that too much for a single focused theme for the conference? Or is it something that we should, and again, I mean, it would be good to have this nutted out now, so that way I can again incorporate it into any correspondence. I mean, and I don't know whether I've changed my view on this after yesterday, but I certainly thought of this beforehand. One of the things, inevitably, when we sit down and have the conference and we have the range of speakers that we had who are all excellent, but there is always, you know, maybe an army heavy sort of feel to it, inevitably, because, you know, that's the, and given the recommendations, in particular, I think the one that is perhaps the most challenging of all is to get after the creation again of an ab initio reserve component in Navy and Air Force. And maybe we need to devote a conference to that. And not that we wouldn't talk about other things as well, but it's I think, such a strategic imperative. And we're starting from a baseline of, you know.
Why don't we call it Back to the Future?
Yeah.
Revisit all of the great initiatives that worked that we stopped. And I think Mark Armstrong's list of 10 things.
Yeah.
Now, the issue is we should think things that we admire but will not address.
Mm.
The issue is in South Australia, there's certainly a big naval presence now. And it might be that you have more of a naval.
So
It's a big, what's a big WA, isn't it?
Okay.
not a naval presence.
Not no presence, no.
Given Mark Armstrong's presentation, it'll be 2 years since the last review. There'll be another review on the horizon.
Yeah.
And maybe we ought to be anticipating that.
I'm not sure whether that's right. I mean, I respect Mark's work, but I'm not sure whether we're going to roll around into another comprehensive review of the reserve in the way that we've just had dropped in this.
Then I think if I'm reading the material leaves correctly, RSL is moving to set up a high level policy process.
Peter Lay chairs at the moment.
If Peter Lay's chairing it, it'll be high level and it'll produce something.
Mm-hmm.
And that maybe is a model that we'll keep an eye on and maybe want to be involved in and perhaps contribute.
Well, I have already spoken to Greg Malik on that subject because in my view, the DRA should have a permanent seat at that table. And I've made that point to him and also to Phil Witter. And I think Greg Malik and Phil Witter have both sort of had to kick the can down the road on that because they've both served in the reserve or are serving. So they say, well, we drop in on that meeting. But I can tell you that around that table, if it were not for the occasional presence of Malik or Witter, there is no one at that table who has any reserve background.
The previous iteration of that Defence Committee, I was a member of that. It was prior to COVID. I was a member of that committee and represented the DRA interests and reserve issues. that committee folded with COVID. And Mike's quite right. I think Phil Winter and Greg Mallett see that, they can represent the reserve issues, but they're not actually members of the committee.
And what's about to change, there'll be a new national president who, if it is as the tea leaves are read, goes the way I think it will, it'll be a new national president who himself has no reserve background. Well, Phil will be there for a while yet, but I mean, you've got so much.
With respect to Phil's reserve experience overall.
Yeah. No, so anyway, my point is valid, and I will continue to pursue that, especially once there's a change in the the leadership. I think
The RSL's not resting on the last strategic review. It's planning ahead, and we need to too.
Yeah. As I say, we were represented formally in the past. I agree with Mike. We need to get a seat at the table.
So let's come back to the theme for next year's conference then. So, I mean, I'll put something on the table. I mean, it's only one idea. I mean, but I think, it would be, I also think it would be send an important message to have a conference of the DRA, because some people still see us as almost entirely army centric, rightly or wrongly. And so I think it would send an important message if we had a conference whose theme was devoted, not exclusively, but focused on the challenging task of creating a genuine reserve component.
Building the reserves for the future.
Yeah.
Joint capability.
I think that's been with the joint, because we do want the army people to turn up.
Yeah. But yes.
But I think we saw yesterday that Air Force and Navy squirming a bit when I pushed them on that issue. They finally admitted that they don't have the capability and that there's no intent at this stage to develop the capability.
Towards somebody else's problem.
Yes, yeah. I mean, my personal view is that unless and until the CDF directs Chief of Navy and Chief of Air Force to raise this capability, they're not going to redirect resources to do that, because their view is somebody else will come and protect and defend our bases. So,
But when we look at them, and look, I agree with you, but when we look at the real solution to this, it's not 450. It's not. It's 45,000.
it's a lot more, yeah.
And so we are probably best, as we did in the 90s. Yes, we take responsibility for particularly the rural places, but they're going to be drawing just to see people in terms of recruiting. So I think we just have to suck it up as two here, because it's only defence. Well, what we do need to get is get those people to start.
Well, I don't think we can suck it up as second division or as army. There will be a great demand on the second division. Once we deploy the regular army north,
we're going to have a third division.
Well, I think, that's why I quoted that one paragraph from the ASPI article yesterday. I mean, and that might be sufficient to focus on as a theme for next year. If you recall that paragraph, and I didn't bring the wretched thing, got it online, but that paragraph in there that says what we need to do in particular is the question of concurrency. The current Army Reserve, be it second division or another division or an expanded second division, it needs to be able to continue to do the homeland defence task, as well as have the capacity to sustain once combat losses start to happen, deploy land elements offshore.
I think we're getting, how about a theme of developing a joint capability from the reserve?
Yeah.
Because then we can touch on all of those points.
Those are the word joint.
And I think the word joint is really good, because then we can squeeze the Air Force and the Navy. But what is a joint capability? Because the two new domains, cyber and space, are not traditional land, air and cyber.
They're critical for the defence of those.
And they are critical of those things. So, and then we can say, well, what is Air Force doing in cyber? What is Air Force doing in space? What is the role of the reserve? How are we going to get? And they talk to us genuinely. They're talking in cyber as mid-career entries, and they're getting, you're a professional that's been successful in your career. How are we going to do that? And I'm going, well, that's pretty good.
Good focus on recruiting too.
Yeah,
Well, I do selection boards, let me tell you, it's not a matter of recruiting, it's a matter of Army and the Army, Navy and Air Force being a little bit more flexible. Okay, that's a thing. I think that's a good starting point.
because it gives us a fair bit of wiggle room.
Yeah.
Okay. Developing a joint capability or creating a joint capability from a reserve.
Because it is important to include the two new departments.
Yeah. It would also give us the opportunity, I think, formally to invite along the service chiefs.
Yes.
Who haven't come to a DRA conference in a while. Certainly in the Sky Blue and Navy Blue department, I don't know whether a service chief has ever come to a DRA conference.
And I think they need to, given the lack of interest.
We haven't invited them.
No, well, there you are. So, yeah. So
We have invited other senior.
yeah.
That's reached us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. So we have a date, we have a location, we have agreement in the broad on the format, including the social function, and we have a theme. So that's great.
Just make one point if I can.
Yeah.
The service chiefs are no longer responsible for the personnel functions within their service. That's the other thing you've got to bear in mind if you go and invite the service chiefs, because in many of the issues in relation to the reserves now funded by the Foxes.
They also don't directly control the generation of the capability within there. That's why we also, if we're going to invite the service chiefs, we have to invite BCDF. Because he really is the person who holds the levers in terms of the capabilities provided to and through the three services involved.
We just simply do not have time to invite all the services, so it's a bit of a road up. And next year it might be cyber, because that's the.
There was one thing I would like to mention in the context of the conference, which we didn't resolve last year. And that is, we used to have, and Jim can speak to this, a policy that said that 50% of the net surplus for the conduct of the conference went to the branch organising the conference. And we did that, I think, the last conference in Queensland. We didn't do it last year. And of course, it's been complicated by the fact that we're getting substantial amount of sponsorship from the Defence Bank, which you might want to exclude. But I just think it's important that there be some incentive for the state branch to conduct the conference, would be like some form of subsidy or surplus to the work involved.
So let's speak to that slightly. One of the things that when we did the study into the conference, it was very strongly suggested that there actually be at this meeting a budget set for the organising committee.
I don't think we're in a position to be able to do that. But yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Speaking as a finance guy.
Idea.
No, this conference, last year's conference, and presumably next year's conference, there was no cost for the venue. So that was the idea, but we still have to have catering costs, etc.
Can I suggest that the way to do this is to capture the costs post the conference, present that to the following year's AGM, and determine what subsidy might be appropriate from the national office, if any.
Well, I think from a state perspective, I don't necessarily expect they're making money out of it.
No.
I just want, I want the money we've expended back. And in this case, most of the donation to the cadets.
Yeah.
And the rest of the surplus in terms of, which I would probably assume about that for most.
So all that can be done in the process that I've just described.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's do that. Okay, that brings us then to state branch reports. And I'm not wedded to any particular order.
Can I ask something?
Carolina, hello.
Hello, can I just interject there for a minute?
Yeah.
With the monies for the conferences, is that going to be including reimbursements for travel for nominated members?
Yeah, that's correct. That's the cost of the conference.
Yes, so what we've done in the past, and I stand corrected here, is that we've had an arrangement whereby national executive officers, which of course includes state branch presidents, if they're not compelled to, of course, but if they wish to claim reimbursement on the product of receipts for travel and accommodation for the conference, they can deal directly with you on that point, Catalina, yes?
Yeah, via you.
Oh, via me, sorry, yes, okay, via me. So let's park that. That's not changing. What we've.
All right, because I can't quite hear some of the audio, and I thought I heard you.
Yeah, so that's not changing, Catalina.
Okay.
What we've said in addition to that, though, is that post each year's conference, the state branch that's hosting that will capture the costs for the conference, which are the running costs of the conference, not the cost of individuals who are attending.
Right.
The costs of the conduct of the conference.
Right.
And then at the next year's AGM, we will look at that and make a decision as an executive on what subsidy, what quantum of subsidy should be provided to that state branch in recognition of their support from the previous year.
Right. And I think Paul might even raise a point that there was a 50% something back to the state if there was any profit left.
No, well, this will replace that process, Catalina.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry to.
No. But is that clear?
Yeah. Yes. Kind of.
Can't be any clearer, I don't think.
Okay, it's clear. But if I'm a bit confused, I'll talk to you offline.
Yeah, we can always chat offline, Catalina. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But the key takeaway for now is that the reimbursement of individuals' travels, expenses and accommodation, that system hasn't changed.
Okay, all right. I'm going to mute myself now.
No, you don't need to mute you. We need to hear from you very shortly.
We want a treasury report.
State branch reports. Well, I have in hard copy one from Western Australian branch, so let's start with the West.
Thank you. DRAWA's membership has dropped to 120 financial members over the past 12 months. And we've got approximately 45 of those as life members. So we'll review their new terminology over the next few weeks. We have some increasing issues in the last year with our email communications, thanks to we've been using Gmail for our mass email mail outs. And for some reason, the majority of our email processes have been going into various people's spam box because they've implemented a new spam protocols at Gmail. So we're now working through that, trying to resolve that. We've got a quick fix, but we're so that's limited our contact with our members for this year. It's taken more than a few months to resolve that. We were very pleased to see that Ray Galley received the Medal of the Order of Australia. Ray was an active member of our committee, being both the treasurer and the membership officer and the secretary, as well as a member of a half dozen other groups, military types. So we did draft up an application on the honours list 2 years ago. And instituted that, so we were delighted to see that processed, and it was a well-deserved effort. We've had a number of our members have passed this year, a couple of them significantly. Lieutenant Colonel Peter Whitstanley, OAM RFD-JP, he was a past president of the association, very well regarded, and also Colonel Philip Skelton, AM. He was the patron of the WA RA6 Association, and we've obviously paid appropriate respects for them and sent flowers to the widows as well. Most of the focus of the effort of the WA branch has been to monitor the Defence Reserve's strategic review and contribute to that submission. Sean has been active in supporting that. So is the membership. And we've distributed to our members fact sheets and reports on where we've been heading and that, keeping them informed. We did have an advantage of having the West Australian Rep Colonel Rogan Aiken who's serving reservist and was the previous assistant deputy commander of the brigade. Provide a lot of feedback both at the AGM and also to our members on how that strategic review is going. We've scaled back our events catalogue, I guess, for this year. We've decreased the number. We've lost a couple of members of our committee. The events manager has actually moved to Canberra, and I believe he's already made contact. So
Yes, indeed.
yes, and
Thank you.
he's a very good worker. And he's enthusiastic. So our loss is your gain. Previously, we supported the Brigade Opening Day, which is normally run in the last weekend of August with a stand and handout. But we've reviewed that this year, and we are not supporting that this year, partly because of the membership decline and the reduced committee. So we'll have a look at that next year. But we normally manage to stand handed out cards, and we've actually had a bit of a shooting gallery, which is draw the kids and then the members, and then we just talk with them, etc. So it's been quite good in the past. There was a new brigade commander, Brigadier Amanda Williamson, resigned earlier this year, and Brigadier Damien Bushell, who attended the conference, and I know him personally. He's on board with the DRA. Sean hasn't yet had a formal meeting with him, but he's had a couple of informal meetings with him as well.
And both the command and the RSM, all right?
Both of them are active and enthusiastic, and I think we're going to have some leverage over through that, and some hopefully presentations to the individual units as well. Interestingly, when Sean caught up with Sean, the president, who sends his apologies, was caught up with Brigadier Williamson last year. They spent quite a bit of time discussing some of the issues, etc. And there's a significant perception from serving reservists of the relevancy of the DRA, and at the moment, and she was reticent of supporting the DRA's presentations and involvement with serving reservists because their perception was that they don't see the DRA and several other organisations that are supporting their employers as an advantage, and some of them actually feel as though it's a disadvantage of letting their employees know that they're a reserve soldier, which is an interesting mindset shift from what it used to be in our serving days. Sean pursued that a little bit, and they were very concerned that that is, a fairly significant factor why serving reservists are not taking up membership within the DRA. We've got a couple of new committee positions to fill, but we've got one of them filled. Vince Smith, ex-retired major, who's a senior member of an EY, is joining the committee as treasurer in September. We continue to sell the odd copy of the Reservist DRA history book, and we've also used them as a gift at some of the raffles for some of the events that we're supporting. We've been involved in a couple of the initiatives from one of the infantry sergeants that are doing an informal morning tea, and the DRA has been putting up banners there and paying for that morning tea, which has actually been quite successful, and they're all ex-reservists. And a couple of committee members were presented with pewter points at the AGM last year. Any questions?
Excellent. Questions? Yeah. I might keep going around in the clockwise fashion. Northern Territory, Jack.
Northern Territory, Darwin, as you know, Mike has been fairly inactive. I'll put it that way. From several years now, I've been the only person involved in DRA directly. We have probably only 5 or 6 members, paid members, and 3 of those 5 are people that have been transferred in, and their membership has been transferred to the Darwin account. I'm in a position where I'm involved in a whole heap of other things at the moment. Patron of the RSL, on the committee for the RSL to establish its own branch, which has taken a huge amount of work on. Re-establishment of the RSL in Darwin, the rebuilding of the club, which is to be called the Darwin Services Club. That's a nightmare in itself. Fighting heritage for the last 6 or 7 months. We say, no, you can't put shutters on the windows.
It's not going to be down on the waterfront, is that? Am I thinking in the right same spot?
It's directly opposite the cenotaph.
Yes, that's the spot. Yeah.
The old Admiralty House, which was the old Navy headquarters. So we should have that open by November, early December. So I'm directly involved in that and negotiating with licensing commissions and all those people. From BRA's perspective, we make our presence felt at mainly at the Navy base, HMAS Coonawarra, who've almost taken over the whole of here. So we get invited as DRA to things such as commissioning, decommissioning of boats and that sort of thing.
Can you speak up so we can hear you down here?
Yeah, sorry, mate. So we have that sort of presence. We all of the BRA relevant information that comes out of the meetings and correspondence is passed on to CO Norforce and the commander of the regional surveillance units, and they're quite interested in the last topic that I discussed with them was our drive to get superannuation approved for or applied to reservists. It particularly affects them because they have so many, about 60% of Norforce is Indigenous soldiers. Their only job is Army Reserve, where they do patrolling and all that sort of stuff. So they're quite keen to see that progress and see what comes out of the inquiries that are going on. So all of that stuff is fed directly to them. I'm actively looking for someone to, as a succession plan, yes, which is well overdue. And I've got a couple of people in mind. One is the CO of 13 Squadron, Colleen. Name escapes me at the moment. She has just come back into Darwin as CO at 13 Squadron. And she, in fact, was had paid to do online yesterday, so she watched the proceedings. And from an Army perspective, I'm looking at trying to convince Mark Christopher, Lieutenant Colonel Mark Christopher, who's in charge of the cadets, to get him involved. As he's long-term Army Reserve and been tied up with cadets for about the last in 5 or 6 years, I guess. Could be, yeah. So there's a couple of possibilities there, and hopefully we can get by the end of this year, we'll have a new structure. We don't have a treasurer, we don't have a secretary. Yes.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. I mean, we really appreciate all your efforts to keep the flag flying up there and for the DRA and particularly for coming down here. Yeah, it was been fabulous to see you. So thank you for coming down. And if there's anything I can do to support or encourage, those couple of contacts in terms of a succession plan, I'm more than happy to jump on the phone and have a chat to them as well. So
Yeah, thanks, Juan.
yeah, great. Thanks, Jeff. Queensland.
Whether you're going.
Oh, sorry. I should have said anti-clockwise. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Detail of that.
Back to you. And we're going that way.
I haven't written, I haven't,
Speak out, Rick, so they can.
I always speak quietly. Yes. I haven't submitted a written report, but I have prepared one. We've been modelling along this year. We had our annual general meeting, which is a combined activity with the 11 Brigade, the last Tuesday in November last year. Liberty Barracks, the Brigade of Marne, Brigadier Richard Peace gave a presentation, and I gave a presentation. It was we get a reasonable attendance, and we get a few questions. So that's always a good activity. We then have our annual general meeting. In terms of we also have a party that gets together after the Anzac Day parade, and they did that again this year at lunch at the United Service Club, which I did other people and the governor. We've currently got 50 financial members. We have 8 honorary life members elected, past presidents and the past secretaries who have rendered lengthy periods in office to us. We're trying to recruit new members. That 50 is up from last year, so I think the efforts of the DRA national conferences have been paying off and attracting members and helping us to retain members. We've also been engaging with the Reserve Forces Day Committee. The Vice Marshal Hugh Bartholomew has got that activity up and running again. They had a march and the parade this year, followed by a reception and City Hall hosted by the board meeting. I've been engaging with the Queensland University Squadron Association. President Ken Lambert is here today, and Jordan French has joined our committee as an Air Force representative with Colonel Wilson French. And you'll see that we have a motion drafted by Gordon and myself to consider later. Trevor Herron and Major Sharon Cook have continued to represent the Queensland branch at the DBA Queensland Consultative Forum, so we actively engaged with them. They have monthly meetings a few months so I'll submit the report.
Sure. Thanks. No, thanks, Rick. Happy to hear, and yeah, it's great to see that evolution and new people coming on in positions of responsibility. Well, we know all about the New South Wales branch because you've just run the conference for us. So yeah, but you might want to add something to that.
Okay, yeah, look, very, very briefly. Our membership still is pretty in flux, but the last time I counted was about 32 paid up members. There's also life members on top of it, and probably a couple of life members. It's a slight increase, but it's a slow slug. In terms of the committee itself, we've got a check. Warren Barnes has stood down for many years as the secretary, so that's a vacant position. And I've got a number of people who perhaps have expressed an interest, or at least I can bend their arm. The capitation issue we've discussed, it's a whole like member thing needs to be considered from a state branch. Brian Walters, our treasurer, has done some great work in sorting out our incorporation, which had been lapsed since 2016. So we did some negotiation with the Department of Fair Trading, and they allowed us to submit reports for 2018 to 2023. We paid the relevant funds, and we are back now as an incorporated body. So that means we can access our funds, and in a financial sense, we are still relatively healthy, although we don't do any particular fundraising per se. We have good relations with the various headquarters. TUDIV, we have one of our committee members is posted to TUDIV. I've got good relations with Commander 5 Brigade and Commander 8 Brigade, and most of the units. There will come a time when I don't know who the CEOs are, but right now I still know who they are, and they're all students of Staff College. We've not had any particular social functions per se. We've got an active branch in that regard. Succession plan, yes, as noted, vacant secretary position. Good news was one of our members, Nigel Webster, who was here yesterday, was awarded the OAM in the June honours list for his service to various ex-service organisations. And Nigel's a stalwart in the Canberra reserve community, and it's excellent that we've been able to bring Nigel into the fold, and he's in it. He will actively recruit for me locally, so that's good. That's probably all you need to know.
No, thanks, John. I mean, I'm very conscious of the fact that you're flying a plane while you're trying to build it, and you're in rebuild mode, and at the same time you're doing that, you've made this conference happen. So thank you. Yeah, it's appreciated. Victoria, Peter.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a little handout for briefly saying what's.
Thank you.
Basically, we're ISQ in Victoria, I would have said. We're looking for a vice president of the Air Force. My son doesn't know it yet. He's just left the Air Force after 25 years, and he's going to become a life subscriber as his Christmas present. But our numbers are well up, thanks to Brian, I think. You'll see the numbers there. We've gone from live subscribers, I think, from 113 to 124. And we've gone from the annual members from 10 to 20. So most of Victorians are, in fact, live subscribers.
I better join the club then, haven't I? Seems I'm one of the odd men out.
I just did resume if you'd like to.
Yeah, that's right. I better pay now before the, yeah, exactly.
I think for next year, I think folks can have
I'll just live member. Our annual members go down, but our live members go up.
I've missed that trend somehow. Anyway, yeah.
We had an annual dinner, annual lunch, which was again well supported and seems to be
Fixture.
an enthusiastic group.
Yeah.
But I think the numbers are declining of that because there's a lot of people dropping off at the top. So I just wanted to thank Brian as our secretary, who does a fantastic job.
He does.
We're glad that we'll be looking. I'm looking forward to going to Adelaide next year. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. And yeah, Brian, I'm a bit from a purely parochial local level. I mean, I see the communication you maintain constantly with the membership, and it's really exemplary. So you do a great job as a secretary down in Victoria.
Sure does.
And you have helped me from time to time as well when I've needed a bit of a bailout or something. So I do, because you're local. So I appreciate that as well. Yeah. South Australia.
I've submitted the annual, my annual statement and an annex on something called the Friends of the TRA. I won't read them verbatim, but it's my privilege to present the report. Our mission remains clear: to advocate and support reserve forces and their vital role for Australia's national security and civil resilience. One of the big initiatives that we've launched this year is the establishment of the Friends of the TRA. It's a new initiative designed to bring together prominent industry leaders, academics and professionals who share the vested interest in defence and reserve. The group emerged from a growing recognition that many employers, researchers and thought leaders are deeply engaged with defence issues, yet lack a formal platform to express their views, share insights and contribute to policy dialogue. And the TRA provides this forum. I also, we held a meeting for the Friends of the TRA, and the patron that we've managed to get is Kevin Scarce, who's the ex-Governor of South Australia.
Ex-Navy.
Still Navy representative, he says. Oh, right. It initiated because the respondents expressed dissatisfaction following the disestablishment of the DRSC and support for employers in reserve in South Australia. We have a very strong group. Yeah, it's been hijacked by, Defence didn't like the input they were getting, so it wasn't working in New South Wales, and so they hired the KPMG to tell them to close it down. Employers and reserve business leaders felt their efforts in reserve were being overlooked. This was especially with defence industry leaders, and we've got a big defence industry in South Australia. And
getting bigger.
And getting bigger.
Yeah.
And we talk about what's going on, we should do this, but defence isn't buying anything right now. They're talking about it, they're going, oh, you should do these things, but they're not actually investing in projects. And defence leaders value the regular investment and regular engagement and contributing to their nation. Now, we held this forum. Dave Lipschitz talked about his Project Capstone, which was a 7-week exercise where we worked with a number of nations showing our technologies, robotic logistics support, robots, drones, all of those sort of things in the US. And that was very well received. We're going to hold a meeting twice a year, and the recommendations from this is that TRA nationally endorses the emerging reference of TRA SA, and continues to welcome their contributions during their biannual meetings. And the TRA National should include input reports from these think tank silos. So when we have these meetings, we'll provide reports to the DRA executive, which should inform the defence industry side of things. And there's another recommendation that we should invite General Pelley to our meetings, but I'm sure we could do that.
So there is no group formed defence, TRA executives. Can you send it out to the states as well? I mean, we'd be interested in seeing what you're doing.
I think it would be good, but I think it would be appropriate from us to the executive endorsement and executive to you.
Okay.
Yeah. But you're part of the executive, Peter. As you know, as a state president, you're part of the executive. So,
and you could come and sit up here at the table if you wanted
to. So that's pretty much a summary of what we've done.
Yeah. So are you seeking on the as we go now a quick motion to endorse the defence?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Can I have someone second that? Yeah. Jeff, thanks for seconding that. Jeff Dunn seconded that. All those in favour? And can I, off the back of that, ask whether, Peter, you might consider incorporating a short presentation on the work of this new body as part of next year's conference?
Okay. Yes.
I think it'd be good for everybody to hear about that.
Yeah. Excellent. That's the driving factor.
Yeah. Thank you. Any questions for? And we already discussed Tasmania, so we've gone around the traps. That brings us then to Catalina. You still with us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
We of course have your hard copy, provided, prior, but you might just want to, hit the high spots in terms of a treasurer's report, please.
The high spots, hang on, just going to bring mine up. I never really know where to start. The one thing I'd like
Start at the
to,
bottom line, Catalina.
the bottom line as in our financials.
Yeah.
Is 21,813. And as of 30 June, we had $25,000 in the investment account. 1st of July, that bumped up to 30,000 till the end of December. We did receive our sponsorships, but this is this financial year, so that really doesn't count for this report. But just to let everyone know, we did get our sponsorships of 10,000 and 5,000 from Defence Bank and ADF RES. I'm needing a motion to be put forward that we do support the ADWA again this year for $500. The audit.
Yeah, the audit report. Yeah.
Yes, please. What was it? Did you say? Did I want a?
You want a motion for the?
Yeah, the audio is not that good. So if I
Oh,
can't,
okay.
yeah.
All
Motion
right.
put forward for the donation. Yes, please.
I'll move it.
So there is a motion to make the customary $500 contribution to the work of the Defence Force Welfare Association.
Yes, yes.
I'd like to, before we start moving the motions, let us have questions of the court treasurer in relation to the report, please.
Well,
And I'm a couple of things that I think we are, from a national perspective, in a much healthier financial position. And the interest of Catalina's been able to achieve on the term deposits has assisted that, but that may be reduced in this year and next year with the reduction in interest rates. I'm querying whether or not we still need to maintain the annual national fee of $250 if you allow national financial position. I don't have a firm view on it. It's a question I have of Catalina.
Catalina, did you get that question?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Okay. Where are we speaking from where she can hear?
It's just, like anywhere here should be okay.
Well, let me move over here. Can you hear me, Catalina?
I can now.
Righto. So before we move to any motions around directing contributions to things, there's just a couple of questions from the AGM around everyone's read the report. So let's just assume that everyone's read the report, the auditor's report. So the question from Paul Irving is, given the relative positive state of the books, do we need to continue with that $250 annual levy?
Well, I really don't want to make that decision.
I know, we're not asking you to make a
it's-
decision, just what's your advice?
For our
I think
account
we
to
have to
stay healthy, I
need to do
suppose, yes, but if there are some branches that cannot financially support that, then I'd be in favour not to charge it.
Your preference would be, from the treasurer's position, that except other than in the case of a state branch having hardship in meeting that contribution, that it continue to come.
Yes.
There's your answer.
Okay, there's the answer.
Yeah. Thank you, Catalina. Any other questions for the treasurer?
If we accept the treasurer's report.
Paul Irving's moved that the treasurer's report be accepted. Have a seconder. Peter, more?
Move that we set a capitation fee of $5 per financial member.
Is this an omnibus motion now?
Yes, second motion.
So first motion is agreed to.
Yeah.
Treasurer report's accepted. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
So I move a capitation fee of $5 per member,
All those in favour?
which we retain the annual national fee of $250 per branch.
All those-
Sorry, wait. So Paul moved through the capitation. Who seconded?
So, okay, it was seconded by Mike Page.
Yep.
The next motion, which is the one relating to the $250.
Yeah, the
State branch fee. Yep.
national fee of $250 per branch.
That was seconded by Jeff Dunn. Thank you, Jeff. All those in favour?
That we donate $500 to the DFWA.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Peter Habsburger.
Yep.
This is a $250 contribution, sorry, $500 contribution to DFWA.
Yep.
And that we pay the local Canberra cadets $500 for the support at the conference.
So this is a motion, Philip, to make a contribution towards a local ACT cadet organisation
Yep. 500 to local
of
cadets.
$500. And a seconder for that is Peter Habsburger again.
So with the cadets, is somebody going to approach you?
You'll be provided with a formal invoice in some fashion.
Okay, and is this,
Catalina, that you can action.
okay,
And for your information, Catalina, it is going to be a cost for the conference.
what was that?
It's a cost for the
Catalina,
conference.
So, the $500 contribution to the cadets should be
It's
considered.
going against the conference,
It's itemised at the cost of the conference. Yeah.
right? Okay, yep.
Are we through? Is that all the motions that we need to move?
Yes.
Can I make a comment quickly though?
Yes,
If-
yes.
Just listening to the state branch's reports, it seems we're getting more and more, and I know you guys have been discussing the membership title with lifetime membership, active membership. I couldn't hear a lot of that, so if I'm asking a question, please just understand I'm doing the best I can to hear it. The more lifetime memberships each branch are getting, that will mean less and less $5 capitation fee to national. Is that right?
No, Catalina. So,
Right.
so here's a summary of what we've resolved today. In
Right.
relation to it.
I can't.
No,
Yeah.
can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but it's very gurgly burgly.
Right.
But
Okay.
I'm hearing, yeah.
That's other mic, so we just do it.
Yeah.
We get it on mute. Turn the noise suppression off.
What my concern is, if this, I thought the lifetime membership, we're not paying the $5 per capitation from the branches.
No, they will be.
Right, okay.
Catalina, only honorary members
Right,
don't
because
pay.
some of the figures I was hearing, I'm not too sure if we're up to date with the capitation fees from each state.
Well, you might, off the back of today's AGM, Catalina, you might just need to seek a clarification on those numbers from each of the state branch treasurers.
Okay, all right.
But fundamentally, the capitation will still be drawn from state branches.
Yep.
Based on their membership numbers, which are obviously those people who paid for a life membership.
Yeah.
And those people who continue to pay, on an annual basis.
Right. So the only members they're not paying for are honorary members.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for clearing that up.
No, great. Thanks, Catalina. Thanks for all your work and thanks for a very comprehensive report.
It's been a pleasure. You're lucky I like doing books.
Yeah, and just to close out on that, and I hope Catalina can hear me, but to echo Paul's comments, I think, we are in a strong, we're a modest organisation. We don't have any paid staff, etc. So, but in that context, we are in a relatively, sound financial position. So, yeah, and thanks to Catalina's careful stewardship. All right, that brings us to other business. And I just ask that we do have a motion from the Queensland branch, and I just asked Rick to talk to that very briefly. I mean, we've all got it here in front of us. Yeah.
Thanks, Lauren. So as I said in my report, we have engaged with the Queensland University Squadron Association, and they're keen to see that re-established. We had dinner the other night with Greg Fusina, and while we didn't discuss it directly, he, I think, when asked to discuss how it would work, how to initiate training would work.
Sorry, Michael, it's got to a point now that we can virtually hear nothing. All we can hear is bubbles.
I think it's because I'm facing away from you. Can you hear that better?
Try to, Josh, see if you can, I don't know, some way, shape or form, get him moved closer or whatever.
Maybe stand next to them.
And it wasn't too bad. If we can get everyone else to mute, which they have now. Yeah, okay. Try that.
Can you hear me now, Philip?
There's still bubbles, but we can work out what you're saying. So.
Maybe I'll stand a little bit away from it. We had a dinner with Greg Fusina the other night, and I think when he was pressed on it yesterday, he somewhat prevaricated. So I don't think there's any commitment from Army or Navy to spend money, which is exactly what Mike and Ed said before. Nevertheless, I think that people in the DRA who need to be interested in the future of the shape of the Defence Reserves in all three services, and so I'm going to move that motion on behalf of the Queensland branch. But I'd also ask you to indulge either Ken or Gordon to say a few words about it as well, because they have an active, well-membered association who are very keen to support this, and there are associations of the university squadrons throughout Australia. And I would remind you that the university squadrons operated from about 1951 to 1973. All of them produced about 20 people per flight in eight squadrons around Australia every year. So there's quite a large cohort of people who've come through that, and it could happen again. And if the defence is going to engage with people particularly with STEM backgrounds, which is where they need to go in the future, then this is a very obvious way for it to happen if they're going to be engaged like this. If I could ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I have 30 seconds? Sorry.
Yeah.
There is a problem with the text, so let's reset this and we should be good.
I'll stand here, be all right?
Come a bit closer.
Speak loudly.
It definitely sounds better now. Try that.
Yeah,
sounds
That's
1,000%
excellent. Now I can hear.
Now you can hear.
Great.
Thanks for indulging me with
No, not at all. No, please.
It's now the end of the meeting, right?
Can we go back to everything after now? Listen carefully.
My apologies. Please go on. Yeah.
Our great leader here has represented our information very well in a very short process, but just quickly, our groups, I think we've got 43 members, ex-Queensland University Squadron members from the time that Gough rubbed them out, and a long time ago. So we've got some remnants and also some new members. Gordon
has been a very great supporter of the group. We've got assets of about 87,000, I think, at the moment in our 43 group bunch. So we've got a few people that know how to handle money. We've been working on this project for about 10 years. We've had various meetings. We had meetings with former Defence Minister, Mr. Dutton, before he became a former Defence Minister. He was the Defence Minister. Gordon's been able to organise very good meetings with other influential people. The idea is to have a pathway between cadets and the reserve so that you have training scheme within the university environment or associated with it. University undergraduates are doing 2 years out of their 4 years, second and third year, where they do a training course like along the lines of the old squadrons, but obviously in a new context. That is probably in maybe a tri-service format where they can have a pathway and they can end up with a commission on the way through. You'll pick up a lot of STEM graduates, no doubt, and it'll also give a boost, hopefully, to the reserve if it's implemented properly. So that was been our project for a long time, and it looks like we're getting a little bit of traction on it. So we hope that you'll support the motion.
Absolutely.
And all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And I think we heard yesterday. Yes, of course. Yeah.
My last role in the Permanent Air Force before I did another 13 as an active reservist was Director of Reserves and Cadets. And it was enormously apparent that technology was advancing significantly in the warfighting business. And so we have currently in the Royal Australian Air Force Reserve a number of people who have done their 20 years and joined the reserve to continue doing what they were doing. We're not getting new, bright new skills into the reserve. There are bright new skills coming through ADFA and areas like that. But the issue is we really need to capture people who want to join the reserve, but are very young and are right up with modern skills. The average age of the reservist in the Air Force is now just a smidgen under 50, which is not sort of generating So it's most important that we reconstitute. This is a cheap Charlie operation. This is an exercise where you need probably 2 people in each state to run these things, and they could be both reservists quite readily. And you capture these people. Now, the Air Force, we know, is quite comfortable with the thoughts. Their only exercise is all about resources, money. And we will continue to push the current Minister for Defence Personnel, who we're meeting tomorrow, to give generously. Thank you.
What is the motion?
To support the.
It's a
motion.
A generic motion.
Let's go read it out.
It's not about the Air Force.
It's that the defence.
It only needs to do the same thing.
So the Defence Reserves Association strongly supports the establishment of appropriate university-based training units in each of the services to mainly capture science, technology, engineering and mathematics undergraduates and postgraduates to give them basic training leading to a commission on graduation with a requirement to serve in the ADF reserves.
Second the motion.
I think in voting on the motion, we recognise for a start, thank you for the presentation and explaining the genesis of it and what's intended to be achieved. I think it's entirely consistent with some of the things that we heard yesterday, especially around recommendation 9 of the reserve review and LOE 5, which is about emphasising officer training and the recognition and propagation of civilian skills and qualifications through commissioned service in the reserve. And I think whilst the wording might be slightly different in that recommendation, it does tally very much with this. in terms of the intent. And I also think we heard yesterday that there is scope, maybe a slight variation on the theme here, but there is opportunity for us to have different variations on the gap year concept, and one that was directed purely towards subsequent commission service in the reserve, and one that is nested within a university or tertiary context could be, I mean, essentially what you're proposing here.
That's right.
So on the basis of that, to have a seconder, do we want to vote on the motion? All those in favour?
Sure.
Carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks very much, Phil.
And I might ask
Thank
you,
you, Phil.
if you may, you're very welcome if you wish to indicate to Mr. Keogh tomorrow when you speak to him that you've attended the conference of the DRA, and that you know it has our support.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'd be happy to have a chat to him at any time as a follow-up discussion on that and other matters. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, that is there any other general business that's from the floor?
Yes, I'll just table an invitation I've received. It's an invitation to me, but on your behalf, to represent the Defence Reserves Association at the Australian War College graduation ceremony, which will be held on Friday, the 5th of December. I think members are aware we present an annual prize to a student identified by the staff of the Command and Staff College remote. Last year it was a $200 book voucher plus a copy of our history. For the first time last year, it was awarded to a member of the Permanent Defence Force. We had agreed previously that if the identified student was a member of the Permanent Force rather than a reservist, that we would accept that. And that was the first time that we'd been placed in that position. The award itself, just to remind you, it goes to the ACSCR course member who demonstrates consistently outstanding performance. And so this is decided by the directing staff of that particular course.
And if I may just interject, Ian,
yeah,
for the benefit of those present that might recall, when we talk about the ACSCR course, the R now stands for remote, not reserve. So it is a remotely conducted course, which by definition, or not by definition, but it is open to both permanent force officers and reserve officers to attend the course in that format.
And it's roughly 50-50 now, the makeup each year, about 50-50 in terms of student numbers. We've received the invitation. Look, the great thing about this invitation is it gives the Defence Reserves Association great public or defence public exposure. Not only have you got 4 courses from the college, it's the Defence Strategic Studies course graduates at this graduation, the Command and Staff course, Command and Staff course remote, and now the Australian Command and Staff course capability management. There are a significant number of potentially influential officers in attendance, and then you've got the hierarchy of the ADF. The Governor General is at this graduation ceremony, the CDF, the service chiefs, chief personnel, chief operations. It's significant exposure. And the great thing is that the Defence Reserves Association is welcomed as part of that hierarchy that attends the graduation ceremony. And then at an appropriate time, the representative of the DRA is invited up onto the stage in front of the entire audience to present the award. So it really is great exposure for our association. Anyway, I've received the invitation and with Mike's concurrence,
Please represent us.
I'll represent the DRA at that graduation on the 5th of December and in due course organise the book prize and the presentation generally to present to the winner. So I'll table that invitation as received.
Any other business from around the hall?
Yeah, I'm not, I'm uncertain as to who was going to be responsible for driving the reforms to our website. It's a formal means of communication. It's there 24/7, and it drastically needs a rehash and a refresh. And I think someone, it can't be the president. The president's got too much on his plate. It's got to be someone else. Preferably someone in Victoria that's close to the people working on the website, and we really need someone to take that on as a project.
Yeah, look, I haven't got the skills anyway. I'm perfectly frank. Even if I had the time, which I don't have the skills. So it's obviously not me. Yeah, look, this is, and look, to be frank, and the national website is a very important fora, and I've already mentioned at the start during my president's report that it's linked ultimately to other things happening in an effective way down the track as well, like the successor to the previous hard copy Reservist magazine. So I'm looking at the Victorian branch here now. I need someone who has got the time and the skills to work with Elizabeth or take it over from Elizabeth, whichever. I don't care. But we need an effective national website. Peter.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that up as a project, not necessarily to be the person who does it. But Paul spoke to me last night, and I had to think about it since then, and I think it's something I can use.
Thanks, Peter.
In my spare time.
Great. I mean, what I need, I'll be blunt, I need to be able to reach out to someone same day and say, I want this on there, or I want this taken down, or I want this changed. And I need to know it's going to happen.
I think broader than that, but yes.
No, but I mean,
yeah.
I can't, that doesn't happen right now.
No.
And it needs to. I need a responsiveness in terms of what's on that website.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I look forward to us making progress in that area. Thank you.
Excuse me, President. Read the AWC grad on Friday the 5th. Is that $200 going to be donated this year to the winner, and does that need to have motion?
I think it's already been approved.
I come to Mike to get approval to go and buy a book voucher for $200.
Yes.
Yes.
And I buy that and seek reimbursement.
Yeah, it does need to be a motion put forward and approved.
All right, move Ian Flowerth. Who's going to second?
Yeah, Mike Page.
Mike Page, seconded. All those in favour? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks for keeping us on the straight and narrow. So we're nearly there now. Just remind me, do we normally come to the end of the meeting by also formalising the date for next year's AGM?
Well, yes.
We should do that, shouldn't we?
We've already done that.
Sorry, yeah, I mean, we've talked about the conference, but I mean, just to formalise that we would do that on Sunday, the 23rd of August at 9 a.m. in Adelaide.
Yeah.
Yeah, for this AGM. Okay. Right. Thank you. And if there are no other matters.
Can I ask a question? Has anybody heard from Elizabeth lately?
Yes. If Peter Alpamate has.
Yeah, and I have too in the last week.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried about her. So if anyone knows anything or can get in touch with her, I haven't heard from her for a while.
All right, and that's part of our general concern. I mean, it's not just about the website, it's also, we don't want to put undue pressure on Elizabeth, who's done a good job over a long period of time, so.
Absolutely, yeah, so if I can just, so, I do talk to her from time to time when she does the approval for payments.
Yeah.
But just lately, she's been a little bit off the radar, and I'm wondering if anyone else has heard from her.
Well,
Can we just, we can do that offline, please?
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, yep, I thought we'd finished.
I mean, I appreciate your concern, Catalina. We know it's,
Sorry, I thought we were moving on to say goodbye.
well, we are, absolutely. So by way of closing the meeting, can I thank everybody for their attendance and participation? And at 11:30, I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
We want this first. Do we need to do a national executive Zoom meeting as soon as next week?
Thanks, folks. I'll send you the transcript.
We do
Philip.
that. The next one.
Oh, Philip's gone. Never mind.
Are you still listening, Phil?
No, he's gone.
He's gone. All right. I'll ring him separately. Wednesday, the 1st of October.